Hi, Ruth. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I have to start out by asking, what does peak performance mean to you?
It means a lot to me. I think that there's several books about being in the zone. I think peak performance is when you're able to perform at your, I think, genius zone as much as you can for as long as possible. And I think you have to be aligned. And that's an interesting word, the word aligned, but with spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. And in that conversation, I really love to focus on the mind body communication part of that. And I like to advocate for the body because nobody does. It's very few of us that advocate for what the body needs and how the body is so important in that conversation for peak performance. So I always love to talk about what that means for others. So I love this. I love the subject.
We're going to deep dive into mind and body both here in a minute. But before we go on to that, let me ask you, you talked about being able to perform in one's genius zone, right? So many of us are walking around saying, forget about genius zone. I don't even know what I'm good at.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding that?
I was lucky because I started early knowing what I needed. And I remember my husband always telling me how jealous he was of that. But I think that we all do know, we just ignore it. And I think that there's sometimes we don't want to be good at what we're good at. And I find the ones that you know right away are things that you also like. Sometimes we're avoiding what we're good at. Maybe you're a good mediator and you don't want to be the person who's always mediating in your family, but you're really good at mediating between two countries or two businesses. I've seen people avoid being really their power in, I would say, being good at teaching because right now in our country, you don't make much money teaching. So I don't want to be a teacher is what I hear, even though I'm good at it, but that's their calling or that's what their genius zone is. Maybe it's cooking. So I think one of the reasons that people don't find it is because they're either afraid or they don't like what's being presented. And I think another reason is that I think we're taught as a culture to be numb to our genius zones. I think in school also we get pushed aside for what you're good at. For me, I was good at drumming. That wasn't okay because I was a girl. I was really good at sports. Why don't you try doing this and push to this direction and this direction? I thought that was too bad. So I think that's a really tough question in some respects, but also very simple in others. So I don't know if that goes around in a circle. What are your thoughts?
You mentioned something really interesting and very true about the school system because they have a fixed curriculum, and a fixed curriculum has a fixed predetermined. So if you are straying away from that fixed determined path because of your unique talents, it doesn't sit well with that path. And I think
Yeah.
this is a story of so many where we just
Yes.
get yanked into doing something we don't want to, years and years of just suffering. We end up picking majors in college based on that, only in your 40s or something to realize, oh my gosh, like, why am I doing this thing? When we're adult, you're like, no, I can do whatever I want, like a real adult. Yeah. And I just think what would have happened if this person was allowed to do what they wanted to do, what they were good at a really early age? How
Yes.
could that life have been turned around? Going back to the question of finding a genius zone, absolutely. I think it's a very tough question, but in my experience, this is what I say. There's so many times I've put on an outfit at a store and I'm like, I think I look good. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, no, I cannot be wearing that and seen in public. And there are times when I put on something and I'm like, oh, that looks weird. And I look in the mirror and I say, oh, this is good. And I feel like when it comes to recognizing our talent, we need somebody in our life, partner, coach, somebody who truly cares about us to act as that mirror, somebody who takes the time to get to know us deeply, help us understand, hey, I know you're doing this thing, but what about this thing? That is almost rare, isn't it? Because everybody is so busy with their own lives, nobody has the time to really devote that to you. And I think that's where the true gift coaches bring because they are there for one specific purpose. They're not talking about the weather or the coffee, they're focused on you. So that's how I see it. If we are lucky enough to have somebody in our life to look at us and be that mirror to us, sometimes it's a little bit easier to recognize that talent we have because we almost always ignore it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think that coaching came into being, I don't know, 30 years ago. But like for me, I had ADHD that wasn't diagnosed, and I was constantly a bother at school. Teachers hated me. I couldn't sit still. I was always like this, couldn't pay attention. And I was lucky enough to have coaches around me that said, hey, why don't you try drumming? And that changed my life. And that helped my massage business. It helped my coaching business because rhythm is such a big part of our life and our body. But I never would have, the teachers didn't want that. And I think you have to really stick to your guns. And that is the hard part. And that's where coaches absolutely come in. I had coaching early in life. I hired my first coach after my fifth year of massage, and I've never looked back. And she was a freaking powerhouse. And I just got my butt kicked all the time. Wow, do that. And it was so fun, but it was a massive mirror. Just look what you're doing that's not having success for you. I was like, and it's like the outfit for you. She was going, that outfit is not working. And when I put on the outfit that was really good and what really worked, holy moly, the trajectory just flew. And all of a sudden I went from 3 employees to 15. I went from a 500 square foot to 3,000 square feet. Everything went up and it never stopped after that. So I really believe in coaching. And I had I had a drum teacher who was just amazing. I had soccer coaches who were just amazing. And I also think that those people, and they're so important and they get no recognition. There's no recognition. And for me as a tennis coach and as a soccer coach for the high schools here in my state, where I've had 3 state championships as a soccer coach and 1 as a tennis coach. And I've coached thousands of teens. I'm giving them coaching all the time. And they've come back to me, the guys that, the girls that I coached for a long time ago, I just love to hear from them. And they're like, oh, I did this. Remember when you told me this? And it's just so rewarding. So being a coach is extremely rewarding and the need for them is so high. And if anybody's listening to this wondering if they should be a coach or have a coach, try it. I think also finding a good fit for you, you have to get the free coaching session or ask them if you could have an interview. Figure out if you guys are a mesh. It has to be like you have to get a laugh a little bit together, but they also have to be serious and be able to be honest with you immediately. That's what I would say about that.
Honesty, surprising, ironically, is at a premium these days.
It's rare, unfortunately.
We have been conditioned as a society to be nice. Almost always takes away from honesty.
Yes.
And while there are while there are short-term benefits to that, because I feel good momentarily, there are long-term deep implications. And we often almost put people on weird trajectories and incorrect trajectories when we're not just being honest and telling them just the nice thing they want to hear.
Yeah, we get out of it. I think that we avoid conflict as a culture. Yeah. And so we learn to avoid conflict in conversations. And then we're so good at it, we don't even realize that we're doing that. And I call those hooks. How are you avoiding what you really need to talk about? And the thing is, the body does that too. The body has hooks and body has ways that it has tells. If you're in a poker game, like the body has a tell that it's like, that was uncomfortable. So watch, the next statement I do is going to avoid what we were just talking about. And if we can learn both how our body's responding and the words that follow, then you can really change it quickly. And I think that there's coaching is so popular now. I do believe that we're changing as it is so frustrating, like this sugar-coated society of, oh, it's okay. I'm like, no, tell me that was awful. Just tell me it's okay. I can handle it. And I think the last decade has been like, here, you get a reward for showing up. That I don't think that's been very helpful for that generation, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's getting harder even more. But this is why podcasts like this are needed. This is like guests like yourself are needed to help people understand that within themselves, they have something to be able to hit peak performance.
Yes.
So let's talk about you. You have been a sports massage therapist for over 25 years. You're a body, mind, life coach. What are some techniques? What are some practices that you help leaders with achieve their peak performance through this body-mind alignment?
Yeah, it's a pretty unique concept. And so I've taken massage and I worked on a lot of leaders through the years. And what I noticed is how there's different ways that the body communicates. There's the thing that everybody knows that's like body language. And that's actually not what I'm talking about, but what I'm talking about affects the body language. So what I watch is I watch the person. I work with a lot of pro athletes. So I've learned to really watch very specific things. I'm watching the eyelids, for example. I'm watching where the toes fit the ground at the heel. I'm looking at different things in the body of how it's responding to discomfort. And then that discomfort, how do they respond to that? And how can they be a better leader? So what I found is that, and what we're needing in our society is that we're being less compassionate, especially in leadership. And that lack of compassion can come from how people treat themselves. So how can I see that? It's the difference in their breath. It's how their posture shifts when they're communicating about a specific subject. It's the way their eyes move. So you could figure it out with yourself if you started being like keenly aware of how your body's responding. So I am looking at very specific triggers of how your shoulders sit or how they come forward, how your throat is open or closed, how your jaw is tight or not. Those are very specific, these three things on how a leader communicates. If a leader is holding things back, the throat will be really closed and they won't be able to communicate good things, bad things. It'll be, their voice will go like that kind of, it'll have a different, it won't be really strong, won't be a very strong voice. And there's just different triggers that I can watch and then help somebody open up, and they'll be amazed at how that can just in real time change their behavior. And then the deeper parts of that is it's usually chronic. So it happens a lot. So why is that happening? What is it about your fears, your worries that has your body hold that down when you're about to say something? You're about to say something really nice and it feels like that's going to be vulnerable to a team of people. And you notice right when it's coming up, you're about to say it and you're like, oh, and you stop it. I can notice those things and help you notice that. What just happened? Why did you hold that back? The issue is that your team knows that too. Even though they're not trained like I am, they see that trepidation. They see you holding back over and over. So you're not being your authentic self. And then you start leaving team members behind because they don't feel like they're trusted, heard, because you're not being trusting and you're not listening well because you have this block in between you. So that's a long way of describing it, but it's been extremely effective to show people and they recognize where their body is stuck when I show it to them. And then they're able to, like my client this morning, like he's been able to notice when he's being not his best self in an interview at home, like with his team or at home. He recognizes that his shoulders come up, that his jaw gets tight. And then he's been able to bring those down and recognize, what is my body actually trying to say? And why am I stressed in this conversation? And he's been able to change it. So it's a really fascinating thing and it's very effective. And I'm taking it all over the world, really. So I like doing it in smaller groups, say 50 or less.
You work with a lot of company leaders. And if I'm a company leader and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, yeah, I have trouble demonstrating confidence. You talked about how you're not being able to be an authentic self. And they're wondering, am I displaying that? How can I show integrity? If I'm listening to this, what are some beginner things that I can start doing to become better at this?
You have to notice, you have to be just really good at noticing your micro changes to your thoughts. Let's say you're going to go into a team meeting and you're worried. Maybe your bottom line is down and you have to maybe let somebody go, but that's not going to happen in this meeting, but you have to talk about it anyway. What I mean, like, it's not fun to go into this meeting. It's not like a celebration of good things. And this happens a lot. I do coaching in real time for people when they walk in. So let's say you're walking in, you have this, everybody's waiting for you, and just notice what's happening. Is your heart rate up? Are you sweating? Is your jaw grabbing? Is it going, are you like clamping down? Are your hands in a fist? Are you holding certain fingers tight? Is your stomach really tight? Are you holding your breath? Is your breath shallow? So many things like if you can recognize what you're doing and how you're feeling in that moment, first thing you can do is just take some deep breaths. That really relaxes the body. Take deep breaths. If you're someone who prays, you could say, pray for some support, pray for some healing. Try to calm your body down. Go into that meeting calm and like in love with your staff. So how can you do that? Sometimes smiling can do that. You can smile at yourself in a mirror. I have a whole presentation just on smiling. If you can go into the bathroom, you're taking some deep breaths, smile at yourself, just be in love with the people you're about to see, but just show love in that smile and just walk into the room like you've heard the funniest joke you've ever heard, shoulders back, deep breathing. You walk in, it'll change that whole meeting just like that. And then from there, I can help you keep that energy, just keep that energy, because what these little memories from the past of when it didn't go well, or just all these little things that can happen from your past, they start to drag that back down, and you just have to keep stopping it. And the best thing you can do is do a cat and cow stretch like this, breathe and smile. Those would be my top three.
You have worked with a lot of professional elite athletes, including champions, NFL Super Bowl winners. What have you learned from the physical and mental resilience from working with them that could be applied to everyday leadership?
Yeah, working with professional athletes, it's really cool because it's extremely tangible immediately what we do together. But what you can learn from these guys who are so disciplined, so self-aware, they can change things literally in a millisecond. And that's why this can also apply to any CEO and CEO of a family, for example, because we change how we're about to say something, how we're about to react to someone in a millisecond. You think you're going to go in and do something you're going to say a specific thing, and you come out, you're like, wow, I didn't mean to say all that. I didn't mean to be not as authentic, not as kind. And so like our defenses come up and we start talking from a different space. As what you can learn from any professional athlete is that they can change and keep their focus. Let's just talk about a pitcher. If a pitcher, he has the ball, he's talking to his catcher and he's looking around him, and then he has his whole routine that he does. And that routine is exactly the same. They know very specific things, where each foot is, where each toe is, where their elbows go, what their jaw's supposed to be doing. All those things are aligned. As a CEO, where you're coming in, you're aligned too. It's just different. You need to have that smile and the attitude and the approachability. How approachable is your posture? Is it too powerful? Is it just something that looks and feels kind and safe to your people? And if you don't know that, you should either ask, you can look in a mirror, you can ask someone like me, and I can show you, like, if it's too powerful or not powerful enough, you need to be right in the middle. And then you walk in to be able to say and be as vulnerable with incredibly awesome boundaries as you can. Those two go together. Vulnerability and really good boundaries, amazing. That's the best leadership that I've seen. It creates kindness with clarity. Really, what are your roles? What is my role? I can be happy about your role, and I don't feel threatened over here about my role. And it creates this really good teamwork and foundational trust in your whole team. But that comes from, to circle back to professional athletes, they learn to do this really quickly. And you can too. Like, you can learn how let's say you were on a phone call with your spouse and you were fighting. Now you have to go in and have this meeting. And you're like, and so there is a way to let that energy go, have your CEO awesomeness posture and your awesomeness, the way you're breathing and smiling, and you let go of what just happened. Things like, how about a tennis player hits a great shot? Awesome. They go into their next shot really confident. Hit into the net. Oh, and sometimes it spirals out of control, right? The whole match is done. Might as well just give up. Just gonna throw my racket. And that happens with all of us in life, where we go, I spilled coffee on my shirt, so I can't have this meeting. The whole business is going to go under. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my wife. Like, it goes like that. And to catch those and to find that really great, powerful, authentic, vulnerable part of yourself that can catch that and say, no, we're going in like this. We're going to go in. We're powerful. We're good. We're letting that go. It's the letting go that's hard for a lot of people. And learning what your body holds and why makes letting go very much easier. It makes it possible and easy because you have a plan, because you understand it's possible. And then when you have hope like that, then it becomes much easier to let it go.
While on one hand, leaders have trouble being vulnerable, letting go, being their authentic self, that affects their body language and therefore, obviously, the way they're carrying themselves. On the other hand, there are leaders who don't know the body's signals and are risking things like burnout, physical or mental. How can we be attuned to our body signals so that we can prevent something like that?
Yeah, awareness is the number one thing, right? If you're not aware, then it's really hard to start with that. But so here's the thing, if you're having chronic headaches, if you're having insomnia, if you're having chronic pain in different joints and it just keeps coming back, here's something that I hear often. I've tried everything. I've been to the doctor. I've been to the chiropractor. I've had massage. I've done this. I've had CT scans. I've had whatever. And like they list all the things and they're still in that case. That's when you start to look inside. Why? What's your body trying to tell you? That's when I come in. I'm like, your body is throwing up red flags. First, it's just like, hey, could you give us some more water? Maybe some more sleep? And it keeps asking you a little bit. It starts pounding and then like it's throwing things through the door and throwing you through the door where you can't ignore it anymore. At that point, that's when I usually see the CEOs and I'm like, gosh, what if we had seen each other like a year ago? This would have been so much easier. You would have gotten better in weeks and not in months. So we are taught as a culture to ignore these red flags. So it's not your fault. Like we're taught to be successful, to go ignore the pain, ignore what you need. You're hungry, that doesn't matter because this is more important. Oh, you're tired? This is more important. Like all these things become more important in our society. We're taught that in teams and in our families. And you just got to pull it back and recognize what's more important. You have nothing if you don't have your health. So like once that, you really have to pay attention to that. And then your close relationships, your family and the people around you, those are important. If those go away because work was so important, I hope that you can look at that and find some lessons in it. And coaches like me, and there's other coaches like you, can help you recognize that's happening, that's spiraling out of control, and then maybe to stop the spiral and put the priorities that should be priorities on top in your life.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. Especially we are living in a weird hustle culture where exactly what you said, it's CEOs are getting on television and telling people, oh, I only sleep 4 hours a day. And I'm thinking, or someone else is thinking, oh, maybe that's why I'm not successful. I should be sleeping 4 hours a day, then I would more time to work. Influencers, fitness influencers getting on saying, doesn't matter. You just keep on running. It doesn't matter. If you feel pain, you just keep going. Every single influential person is almost trying to say the reason they are the way they are because they have somehow learned to discipline their mind to ignore the pain. But it's just temporary. That's not a long-term solution. So I really like what you said about not ignoring them and waiting until they blow up to a point where that's a bigger issue and tackling them now. You are also passionate about working with teens and addressing mental health issues like suicide. What approaches do you find most effective in offering them hope and support?
Yeah, it's really needed. It's exponentially gone up in our world. I've always worked with teens. I've worked with teens since before I was a teen. There's pictures of me mediating, like as a little kid between these two teenagers. This was in Germany when I was living there at the youth. So I would say to listen. If you have teens, and I know that's such a trite answer, but they don't feel heard. I can guarantee they'll tell me, my parents don't listen, or my teacher doesn't listen, or my coach doesn't listen. They don't feel heard. And this is pre-COVID also, right? It's just a kind of general teen thing. So to give them hope, if you are able to get your teen in a car with you alone, then I would suggest getting them in a car. Unfortunately, go get some drive-through food. You can't do that in like Italy. You can't do that in Portugal. But here in America, go get some whatever. Just get some food and feed them right away. So that's the first thing I would suggest. Get in a car, get them whatever they want. Don't complain. Let them eat. Drive around a little bit, and then start talking to them in a little bit where you're not looking at them and they're not looking at you. And I would suggest to start like with conversations, blame yourself first. So I would say things like, I haven't been around recently, or I haven't been available to talk to, something like that. Say something like that. And the next thing I would say is, I really want to do better. Can you help me get to know you a little bit better? Because I don't feel like I'm doing a great job right now. And I really want to. So I really want your help to know how to be closer to you. Something like that. And now I am not a psychiatrist or a counselor. So I'm a coach. People call me in as a coach. So I give you these as a parent and someone who has worked with a lot of teens, and who I have a house full of teens very often. My house is also a sober house. So there's no marijuana here. There's no alcohol here, other things. There's nothing here. So it makes it really safe for teens to come and know that there's no pressure. And I know some of the teens want to bring it in, and I just have an honor code. I think if you feel like you need some help, I think getting family counseling is really helpful, maybe away from school. I know sometimes at school it's free, and take it if you can. But I don't think the people that at least the teens that I've talked to, they don't feel like it's private at school. People see them walking into the room, or it's not as private as doing something out like at a church or maybe at a private counselor. There is some free counseling if you can't afford it. So that's what I would do. I think kids need to be outside. Here's another thing. For all the teens that I work with, every single teen has to volunteer. And man, does that change their perspective. We go, if they don't have allergies, we go to the Animal Humane. They have all kinds of programs. Like you could volunteer almost any day for any time. You have to do a little training. It takes an hour maybe. There's another one here for the orphans. So I take the kids to especially the older men, to like the football players. We go to the orphans. They love playing with those little kids. Again, they think that their life is the worst. This happened. I'm like, oh my God. All right, let's go talk to some homeless. And I'm like, here's $20. You get to get whatever you want at this restaurant. Okay. And then we go and watch some people who are really hungry. And every time they give their food to that person. And I have this on video because after that, this one young man, every time that he was given food by his football team, because they're on a food, what's that? Can't remember, but they go to different restaurants every day and they're supplied by that to support the football teams. And he would take because he was eating at my house with me and my family, he would go get his meal and go find someone and give it to him. We were trying to find teens that were homeless. They're very challenging to find. The teens that are homeless, they hide. It's a very scary world out there if you're a homeless teen. If your teen runs away, you need to get very serious about finding them very quickly. I think you have a 48-hour window, but that's a whole other subject. Coming back to just teens at home, feed them, talk to them without eye contact, take the first hit, and then ask their help for them to help you be a better communicator with them and see where that goes. That's what I would do to create hope for them. Oh, I wanted to tell you also, though, I take these guys outside all the time. We go have a picnic. We go for a walk. We go clean my car. We spend time outside. And it's amazing to me how many of these kids are not spending any time outside. And the other thing is that they're not allowed to be on their phone when they're with me. So that might be hard as a parent, but as a coach, it's easy. There's no phone. But so as a parent, I get it. That might not be as easy. But the other thing is you can't be on your phone. That's the thing. It's not like you can tell them and then you're checking your text or you're taking calls or whatever. You're like, oh, this is so important. All right. And I've been doing that. My gosh, my kids, my teens, my son is 19, pointed out to me and took pictures of me on the phone while we were at dinner. And I haven't heard the end of it. I tell you this, with a teen in my life, I didn't play by my rules. I was like getting mad at him, but here I am thinking that whatever's coming in at me is more important than my son. It's ridiculous. What am I thinking? So again, the priority is that we think the hustle and bustle is more important than your time with like a teen is, if you haven't spent time with them, they're going to go and you might not see them for years. And so I'm really trying to put that time in so that I can gain the time back from them. And that's what I would say. I know that's a long-winded answer, but if you ever have problems with teens, give me a call. I'm happy to do that. It's a scary time for parents. They're weird.
Not only you work with teens and all these things, you also work with them on addiction and recovery. So my question to you is, you're already such a successful business person. Your hands are full with problems that your clients are bringing that they're paying you for to solve. Why do this in the first place? What's driving you? What's the motivator behind doing this?
I feel that a lot of them are alone. And the reason they're doing high amounts of alcohol or drugs is because they are lonely and sad to a point where they could kill themselves. And I feel like just a little bit of my time is worth a lot for saving lives. And there's no amount of money that if I can help somebody, oh my God, I will get paid. And I already am. I am so blessed. And I've always done it. and I probably always will. It's not something that it's a career. It's just showed up. I feel like God touched me and said, "You're good with teens, you're good with the body, go." So I was like, okay. And I was recently told that bringing compassionate leadership is not something I'm going to be able to retire from, that I'm going to try, but it's a needed force, and that I'm not going to be able to retire for a while. So I was like, oh, and I do think that if you're good with teens, just go find a way to do that, because man, they just, so many people don't know how to communicate with them. And yeah, so I guess it's a drive from, because I know I'm good at it and the need is out there. Why not? I will make a little bit of time for them. Actually, my daughter changed her name on my phone to say, "Your one and only daughter." So to give you like, there have to be balance and there has to be boundaries around that, where I have to make my kids number one. And there were, like, when I was coaching and my daughter was still in the house, clearly she didn't feel like I was making her number one. So I make sure that they know that they're my number one priority and that these other teens that are around come second. So that's something that you also have to know. If you're good at working with teens and you have kids of your own, just make sure that you're doing that. But you get dinged like I did. She forgives me. That's been on my phone she's 22 now. And I think she did that when she was 13, but have your boundaries around it. And I think the other thing I do is I group them together. So if I'm going to an event that needs volunteers, I group the guys together and I bring them together so I don't have to do too many of those. So that's another thing you could do. The other thing is, a lot of these teens are very lonely. And if you create ways for them to socialize with other people that are also lonely, sometimes they can form some really good bonds. So I would also suggest that.
Mental resilience is something that is needed in teens, that is needed in adults, everywhere. What are some techniques to build up this mental resilience, especially having worked with people all across the board?
Yeah, mental resilience in general. And in my opinion, it's also the ability to pull yourself out of negative thought about yourself. So like the resilience, if you can pull yourself out of those thoughts, and if you get in a habit of doing that and you're able to do it quickly, that's how you can be more resilient. And how do you practice that? Like it's a habit like working out. You have to notice that it's happening, first of all. Then you have to notice why, and then you have to stop it when it happens. So the other thing, instead of just stopping it when it happens, is the second conversation. So this is what I would say. I'm really bad at having meetings with my teenager. I'm terrible at talking with my teenager. So you have this thought in your head, and then things happen, like your eye contact with them goes down to the floor or above them, right? It's not at their level. So the eye contact will go away. I'm just giving examples. So notice what you do. Is it your contact? Do you stop breathing? Do you avoid where they are in the room? Do you start doing this kind of thing? Like you're not saying anything out loud, but you have this little attitude with your body, like that type of thing. And if you can recognize you're doing that because you're afraid of what they're going to say, how you've been in the past, and that's when you have to do the work with a coach or with yourself. It's like, why are you doing that? Is it valid? Is it real? And do you recognize that pattern of thinking you're going to respond in the same way is creating the problem with your teenager or with your teens or with your spouse or with yourself? So the resilience comes from recognizing that you have that pattern, recognizing that you can change the pattern into something positive, and then stopping your mind and your body from creating that same cycle. When it starts to slip over here and go, oh, they're terrible and I'm going to be bad at this. No, okay, it's okay. Put my shoulders down, take a deep breath. We're okay. Pull back over here. You're a good parent. You're a good CEO. You can do this. And you just have to continuously do that. It's sometimes 1,000 times per day. If you read books like Tiger Woods, for example, when he's about to take a shot and he can see maybe it's a par 3, so it's pretty close. He could do it with one shot. And he talks about how he doesn't even see anything but that hole. He doesn't see all of the things that scare the rest of us. He doesn't see the water. He doesn't see the sand. He doesn't see all the parts that could make it go wrong. All he sees is the positive and his goal at the end. And the same thing when we can just pull it back. Notice what your body does. Notice what your thoughts do. It will be in a pattern that goes in the cycle. And you just have to create a different pattern, repattern to be positive. And you just have to pull it back into that, pull it back. And it takes time. That's why coaches, again, we catch that. We can catch it. Oh, you just did it again. I did? Yep. Do you remember what you said? Oh, I didn't even notice. Or I say, look at your shoulders are up, your jaw's tight. What? You just stopped breathing. Oh my God, I did. And then they start to notice, you start to notice more. And then eventually you don't need me. You don't need the coach because you're really good at catching it. You catch yourself and you go into the positive pattern. That creates the resilience and it's needed. I totally agree with you.
What is the lasting impact that you hope to have through your work with leaders, with teams and athletes? How do you see your role evolving in the next couple of years?
I see me on bigger and bigger stages internationally, and I see spreading kindness, literally compassion and kindness. Like, how can we be more kind to ourselves? Then we turn that outward. I believe that the attack on ourselves is so strong right now, where the negative little chatter that's happening all the time is really bogging us down as a society. And it's not just America. I go everywhere. It's really bad. I just got back from Italy. I talked to people in Taiwan. It's I want to shift that conversation. That's what my legacy, I would love to create more kindness where kindness is just, it's part of your day and it's part of how we respond to each other. And that is more important than the hustle and bustle and more important than financial success. I think that if you're more kind and you're more compassionate and authentic, you'll make more than you need and you'll open that up because I believe like it's that money is an energy. And if you're putting energy out there to really help the world, then money, it just becomes secondary. But there's such a worry about money, worry about success, worry about failure, all this worry and fear that creates all these dis-eases in the body. And I want to create more kindness for ourselves and for each other. That's definitely the legacy I want to leave.
I really liked how you said dis-eases. That's exactly what it is. It's a dis-ease. Often almost we're talking disease and we forget what it means. So I really like you
Right.
pointing that out. Ruth, there are so many coaches out there who are trying to do good in one arena, but you are a polymath and you are not only able to help leaders in a business environment, you're able to help teens grow up properly and feel included and become working members of society. It not only just goes to talk about the different skill sets, the technical skill sets you've acquired, whether it be working with the physical body or the mind or putting them together, it also speaks volumes about type of person you are. Because a lot of these things, like I said earlier, you don't have to do them, right? They're optional and you're doing it because of your heart. And because you're doing because of your heart, they are no longer optional. There is
Thank
something
you.
to be said about a person who goes above and beyond, putting food on their table, making money, and taking on tasks, believing in people, and pouring themselves into them so that they could be better functioning members of society. And in exchange for nothing, these teens, they leave your house better, much better than they came back. They grow up to be fully functioning members of society. They may not even have the understanding to reach out to you and say thanks or this once in a while. So it's almost you're there to guide them through this path with all just it's just a without any expectation in return. And it really warms my heart to meet someone like you because there aren't many people like you. So it is truly an honor and a privilege to be able to chat with you and get into the mind and understand why you do things and how you go about doing them. Thank you for being on the show. Any last words for our audience members?
Oh, thank you. By the way, I want to acknowledge that was very kind. Thank you. I would like you to remember that your body loves you and it has a story to tell and to listen to it, and that leading with kindness will only greatness for you. So remember that and lead with kindness.
I hope to talk to you soon.